Yo, this right here is a classic case on how to mismanage your bus operations. And the case study is obviously from the bus operator that shall not be named. So, just like most political parties, I would say, they have permanent staff, which obviously comprises of full time and part time as well. Because even PTOs, not every single bus captain is full time. There are some part time bus captains as well. And then there are the volunteers. Now, I have nothing against delegating the work to volunteers, regardless of whether they're actually paid or not. Like if they volunteered and signed a contract to be hired as a temporary staff, or they volunteered just out of goodwill without getting paid. I'm not going to go into details on exactly what kind of volunteers they were at the time, but the main thing is that if you want to volunteer, then you need to be at least like somewhat competent in the stuff that you are actually volunteering for. Otherwise, you're just gonna make things even messier for the actual staff. So even poor LTG, they are like a neutral ground. They had to write something like euphemistic to cover their asses, basically. Like, you all know this is false. Like, if you actually are able to read between the lines, this is just another euphemistic way of saying, hey, we don't have enough funds and resources or manpower to continue operating these services. Like, we're not even surprised, given how, like, the entire situation with nightlife in Singapore in general. It's not that there's no demand, but the increasingly, like, busy or hustle lifestyle means that less people are staying up late till night to, you know, hang out or get wasted, basically. And also the fact that, let's just say, quote unquote, drinking cultures. I mean, I myself, I don't drink at all. I don't do any of that such stuff that isn't good for my own body, okay? Like, even if somebody held me at gunpoint and said, hey, you have to drink, I would say, hey, if I were to do that, you have to give me 0.0, and I mean strictly 0.0, okay? But that's not important. I'm just using myself as an example as to how, even in Japan, right? Like, the whole drinking culture thingy is kind of like dying, and this means that a lot of these nightlife areas, the shops and everything, they aren't really making a lot of money and stuff like that. And eventually, this would lead to the demise of nightlife. It's not to say that there is absolutely no like nightlife, but there's just not enough people to actually sustain not just the businesses, but the literal bus services that are ferrying you back to the destinations. Because even back in the day, the NR9 to NR22 era, there were even bidirectional night bus services as well. Like, even NR8 used to be bidirectional. I mean, you can look up the wikis to see which ones were bidirectional or which ones were loop services. But, and then there was an era whereby NR1 to NR8, they were like, okay, not all of them, but like, some of them were, they were loop service. They started inside the city, they went to the residential estates, and then they went back to the city. That was for SMRT. Because SBS ones were unidirectional, and then SMRT decided that it wasn't sustainable and that it would make more sense for the buses to did head back to the city, if I'm not mistaken, rather than operate as revenue services, because they fetched air. So eventually, SMRT converted their loop service night rider buses to unidirectional night bus services, which was a lot more sustainable. So as you can see, even for PTOs, right, it's already not easy running night buses. Like, when I mean not easy, I mean it's not easy to sustain or break even. It's more of like a service or kind of like an advertisement or PR thingy. And why do I say PR? Because if you think this bus company actually, like, cares about the well-being of Singaporeans or people living in Singapore, no, they're just here to do business. They just try to tap on like whichever market is I don't know economic terms, but like basically when you have a market, right, you want to target that market, that kind of thing. That's what I want to say. But the way the whole thing was being carried out, it felt more like a PR stunt or advertising as opposed to, hey, we actually commit to providing you quality night bus services. Because this idea actually didn't come from the operator itself, as in like the bosses and everything. It's more of like an employee had an idea and decided to bring it up to the boss, and then they would execute or implement it. But why is this important? It's because these permanent staff at that time, some of them have already left, obviously, or volunteers, basically, either under contract or they volunteer out of goodwill, or maybe it's because I just want to hang out with my friend, that kind of thing. This whole idea was actually brought to you by bus enthusiasts. It wasn't because somebody in the company saw a potential market and actually wanted to target that market and bring about quality bus services that would benefit said demographic group of passengers. No. It's just bus enthusiasts looking to do publicity stunts. Now let me get into the shenanigans. One of the volunteers, by the way, fucked up the rostering so badly. I don't even know what was the extent, but he did a bad job. I don't know if he was managing like NS1 or NS2 or both, but he fucked up. Like, I get it. They were just volunteers, but if you cannot even manage two bus services, what makes you think this project will actually succeed? And once again, I say, I have absolutely no issue with the whole concept of PTOs or private bus operators hiring volunteers to, or basically, subcontracting their rostering or anything to people that are not officially employed by the organization, right? I don't mind that. But whoever's in charge, you need to at least be competent in what your job scope is or do your job well. And I know, talk is easy, talk is cheap. Why are you over here bitching from behind a computer screen? Here's the thing. I admit that I am not good at rostering, so obviously I wouldn't put myself in any rostering kind of roles, right? I would rather put myself in, like, let's say, route design. But again, it's all about competence and playing to your employees or volunteers' strengths. This one obviously didn't break even. This one, I am not too sure, but it's safe to say that with the number of trips they're running, it's like you run X number of trips, right? And then each trip you need to have like a certain number of passengers in order for your bus service to break even. So let's say, for example, you're running a premium bus service, right? And then your fare is like 450. You would need around 27 to 29 packs. I didn't actually calculate that. I'm just giving an example that's like kind of aligned with reality. You would need like at least 27 to 29 passengers for this one trip to break even. And then even in public transport operators, right? Okay, or actually no. That's more of like an LTA term, but even before LTA took over the bus services in Singapore, there was a similar concept and the way it was like calculated. LTA kind of like calculates it differently, but for LTA it's called fare box recovery rate. This one I've talked about in like many videos before, but basically you need a certain number of packs for your one trip to break even, and that's just one trip. If we take a look at it like overall, I can guarantee you that there is no way in fuck these bus services would actually make money. And when you take a look at the route, it isn't even that bad. It was like, let me just run through, because I've never actually memorized this route. Like, okay, it starts from like outside Shenton Way bus terminal, I believe. The layover, I think it's like the heavy vehicle park near there. So it's like Anson Robinson, and then it follows. It kind of follows 97. Okay, more of like 133 or 106 actually. Then it follows 195. Not really, but North Bridge, South Bridge, North Canal. They use North Canal in order to access like Clarkey Station. And then they sort of like mimicked the old, I think this was SBS, the way they actually, I'm pretty sure this is like the way SBS night owl buses were routed. Like, the reason why is because there are like all these hotels here at near Havelock and Great World City. And then they went to, okay, Orchard. Oh, it kind of mimics Night Owl in a way, except that they actually have the Anson Robinson Marina Boulevard area. Then, let me see this. Ang Mo Kio Avenue. Okay, 183. So they just served like a small portion of Ang Mo Kio, which is where like 22, 24, 135, 853 serves. Ang Mo Kio Avenue 3, Yio Chu Kang Road. Okay, then this one kind of copies old 511 and 512 a little bit. No, then it copies 109. Bangkok Green. Okay, I like 94 Green, Sengkang East Road, Way, Punggol Road, Field East, Drive. It copies the LRT. Okay, this is good. Sentul Crescent, Sumang Link, and Punggol Way. I assume this is like North Shore area. The route isn't even that bad. It's actually, honestly, if you let me design a Night Rider bus route, I would have designed it in a similar way. I'm not an expert in Night Rider bus route design, because I know that Night Rider bus routes, they don't follow the same guiding principles that normal bus routes would follow. So now, this is where the shenanigans actually begin. You would see that this thing is like kind of similar to the one previously, except this one would copy the SMRT's Night Rider, because some of them actually use Killiney Road. And then, okay, Takashimaya, the hotels at Scott's Road, Newland Circus, Bukit. Okay, CT SLE. You don't have to worry about traffic congestion. You can just use the expressways all you want, because it's like late at night. Okay. This is where I've talked about this before. This is where the shit started to unfold. Every single other person whom was permanent staff at that time, the people that came out with the routes, They all wanted this bus service to wind inside either, let me see, Yishun, wind in either Yishun, Sembawang, Admiralty, Woodlands, Marsiling. Like, they wanted the route to wind for kind of like maximum catchment. Not really maximum, but it's like they kind of wanted the route to actually go into the estates without being too windy, of course, so that there could be more potential catchment. But like I told you, like, don't volunteer to drive night bus services if you don't even have the heart to serve your commuters, and your whole attitude about this is to just drive a bus and you want to end early so that your stupid ass can go sleep earlier. In that case, don't even volunteer to drive the night bus services in the first place, because essentially one of the drivers, bus enthusiasts, basically sabotaged the entire route planning team, and the route planning team obviously wasn't happy about that. And it all ties into the fact that some people are just not concerned with actually providing good quality service. All they want is just the publicity stunt and the attention to themselves. Here's the thing. He did not like actually, how do I put this? It's like they would give you the opportunity to be like, hey, do you want to drive this bus route or not? And at any given point in time, if sleep was his concern and if his sleep clock was his primary concern, right, he should have refused. But no, in the name of publicity and in the name of being an attention seeker, he decided to carry on, and he was like, I'm just gonna make the route parallel the MRT viaduct, and because, people have legs, they can just walk to their doorsteps, and they just parallel the MRT viaduct, and then I would OS quicker, I'm in charge of the route, so I could go home and sleep earlier. It's so stupid. And the thing is, everything I've been saying now, it sounds like a really bad joke, but trust me, this is what actually happened behind the scenes. Luckily, this was just for one bus service, but if one bus service is already being this badly managed, not just by the volunteers fucking up the rostering, but also the drivers being lazy and not going the extra mile could have refused, but not going the extra mile to actually deliver and provide quality service, and only wants publicity and attention. This is what happens, and this is why I say that, power corrupts. And you'd think that, bus enthusiasts would actually care about, bus operations, or actually be passionate about buses, right? I'm here to tell you that, unfortunately, not everybody is like that. Some people are only in this hobby because they want to get rich, or they just want to hog the attention all to themselves. This is just a reality. And I'm not even talking about the whole, all the bus enthusiasts, they started misbehaving on board SMB 340D, that red stripe man A22, right? It's not even a case of, these people misbehaving and bringing down the community name. The real people that are actually bringing down the community, I kid you not, it's the people that are actually inside the industry sabotaging from inside out and claiming they have a passion for buses. Yeah. And I don't know how many strings, let's not even talk about the media. I don't know how many strings they have pulled to apparently be able to test drive the training buses inside the respective PTO's depots, even though he was told to resign from a literal PTO before. I don't know why, of all people, he was able to pull strings, not just with the media, but with the literal bus depots as well, to drive their test buses. For what purpose? I don't know. And he ended up crashing a bendy bus in Seletar Bus Depot. and another SBS Volvo B9TL. Right. And somehow he gets all the publicity. And yes, allegedly that particular bendy bus is still MIA. And I even heard stuff about, like, there was even supposed to be this. That served, like, Bukit Panjang and Choa Chu Kang, meaning it was supposed to be kind of like a parallel to the old NR3. And thank goodness they never actually did this, because it would have been an insult to NR3's actual predecessor. So there was even supposed to be this. But as an extension to this video, it's not really related to this topic. I've already yapped what I wanted to yap about the whole thing about, like, how not all bus enthusiasts actually have passion. Without even looking at the map at all, I just want to see how much I've actually regressed when it comes to, like, Singapore bus knowledge now that I've returned home and I'm no longer in Singapore, right? So let me make my own version of this kind of bus service. So you could follow the exact same format. You don't really have to start from, like, Resorts World Sentosa or anything. You could just start it from, like, Marina Center Bus Terminal, especially if a PTO is running it. So let's say you could just copy the entire format. Okay, let's say you were to copy the format of Knight Rider 2 and 3, like NR2, NR3, right? Up till, like, Killarney Road. So what I would do is basically after Killarney Road, you turn left, and then it'll be Somerset Road, and then you go into Orchard Turn. There's bound to be, like, some late night shoppers there. I forgot what time the shops actually close, but whatever. Like, Orchard Turn. And not to mention there are hotels there as well, so yeah. Scott's Road. And then Stevens Road. I don't mind making this thing call stops along Stevens Road because there are residents living along Stevens Road, so I'm not going to make it express. I will actually make it call Stevens Road. Whitley. So this is kind of a play on 972 and a little bit of 190, but nighttime. Whitley Road and okay, what was it? PIE, BKE, Bukit Panjang Road. And because this is a Night Rider bus service, I would actually make it go inside Bangkit Road. And then Bukit Panjang Ring Road. There are two options. You could do the entire, for simplicity's sake, you could do the entirety of Bukit Panjang Ring Road up till Bukit Panjang Road. Like, you know, Jelebu Road, right? You could cover the entirety of Bukit Panjang Road from this point onwards, or alternatively you could copy either 922 or 972's routes, depending on how much catchment you want and how much potential catchment you're willing to sacrifice. So this is it for the Bukit Panjang sector. Obviously, Bukit Panjang alone as a night service, right? You're not gonna get enough demand from just, you know, Bukit Panjang alone. So yeah, I was thinking about, like, exiting Senja and then going on to Woodlands Road, but realistically, you don't really have a lot of flats around there. I would rather you just copy 972/M instead. So we go back to Bukit Panjang Road, which is where Downtown Line is, and then Choa Chu Kang Road. Now, there is this whole debate on whether you should go Choa Chu Kang Way or Teck Whye Avenue, but in this case, Teck Whye, you know, like Choa Chu Kang Way, one side is kind of like the private housing area, and then there's like ITE College West as well, and then the other side is residential. But then if you want that kind of like maximum residential catchment, you should go Teck Whye is it Avenue? I keep forgetting. And I was debating about Teck Whye Lane as well, but I think you know, if I wanted to run bendy buses on this service, see, here's the thing. I'm not in favor of running double-deckers on night bus services because, like, let's say people are unwell, there's absolutely no chance that they would actually go to the upper deck. So if there is demand, bendies. Like, you know the Night Rider bus services, I think all except one or something, I forgot, use bendy buses. I'm not sure about NR9 to NR22 if SMRT actually used bendy buses on them, but yeah. Like, I forgot the fleet. Maybe you could check in the former deployments in SGWiki, but yeah. Okay, so from here, I'm going to go Chua Chu Kang Avenue 1. And let it go. Okay. I don't need Avenue 2, I just need Avenue 3, Chua Chu Kang Avenue 4. I don't need this thing to touch, like, Chua Chu Kang MRT because literally it's nighttime. There's, like, no bus to transfer to. And if they want to access somewhere that's, like, near Chua Chu Kang, like, you know, there are condominiums, like, nearby, you could just access it from Chua Chu Kang Avenue 4. Then I would make it do... Sorry. You can access it from Chua Chu Kang Way. Yeah. I meant to say you could walk from Chua Chu Kang Way to Chua Chu Kang MRT. From here to... Yeah, this is a sign of me, like, regressing, actually. Like, this, Chua Chu Kang North 5, Chua Chu Kang North 6. Then you surf outside UT because it's not crowded. Chua Chu Kang Drive. Chua Chu Kang North 7. Chua Chu Kang Crescent. And then North 7. The last stop. And from this point onwards, you could off service to the depot. So this is how... Oh, sorry. This is how I would plan a Night Rider bus service. I plan with purpose, I serve 3 areas, and I don't make it wind unnecessarily. You can make it windy, but you need to wind with purpose. You need to know where your potential customers are at. And if one portion of the route proves to be a waste of time, like literally no one boards, like let's say you could replace this portion with just Chua Chu Kang Street 52, like you could take a shortcut to UT like MRT and just follow 302. Yeah, you could. But since this is a Night Rider bus service, normal bus route planning rules don't really apply to them. So if you want maximum catchment, serve the entirety of North 5, then you go on to North 6 and UT MRT. So this is how I would do it. And then how would I make improvements to this? Okay, so instead of following the MRT viaduct, right, I'm not going to be thinking about Ishan's western area. I'm going to be talking about like Ishan's eastern area. You don't really have to go as far as to like hit Melody Springs or anything. All you have to do is once you touch Cut Tip MRT, right? Again, conceptually, if you want to extend the feeder's operation timings for Fridays and Saturdays and eves of public holidays, obviously only if you have the manpower. I'm just saying in theory you could do that, but you do Ishan Ring Road, which is basically the eastern side. Just cover the entirety of it. Go back to Ishan Avenue 2, and then you could do Canberra Link. Then, and it's quite easy for the bus captains to follow as well. Canberra Link, then Sembawang Way. You don't necessarily have to wind in Sembawang Way, and the reason for that is because like you have Sembawang Way, you have Admiralty Drive, which is quite close, and then you have Sembawang Crescent. It's kind of like within walking distance, so in this case you don't have to wind. But here's the thing. When you reach Woodlands, right, like let's say Woodlands Avenue 7, it's not wise to just go through the entirety of 7. Since Avenue 9, right, one side is like there's nothing or industrial, and then the other side is residential, obviously it's not worth it. I would rather you copy 962 in this case. So from 7, you go on to 6, and then 5. And what I would suggest is from 5, right? This actually kind of mimics the old Premium 587, if anybody even remembers that route. So you could go 5, 2, and then 1. Or alternatively, if you want 4 and then 1, depending on how much potential demand you would get, either 2 or 4, I would be fine with it. And then 1, and then you can either surf outside or you could copy 912's West Loop and go inside Street 41, and then 1, and then Woodland Center Road. And if your passengers request for it, you could do kind of like a, I don't know, ad hoc thing. If they want to drop off at anywhere along 903's looping point, they could, minus the industrial areas, of course. I'm just talking about like, you know this portion of the route, right? If they wanted to drop off at like anywhere along, you know 903's route, right? Anywhere along here, or even here as well, or even 913 West, like currently. If they wanted to drop off at any points of the route along here, you could detour for the sake of them, since it's already so near the ending point, which is Woodland Center Road. Like, I'm okay with this kind of like flexibility. You don't have to like stick to such a rigid route. Like, if you're like reaching the end of the terminal and then everybody else has already alighted and you just want to go the extra mile to serve these passengers better at an ad hoc basis, you could. Except that maybe you could say, if you want to ad hoc drop you off somewhere else, you would have to pay an extra fare, or like beforehand you would have to tell the bus driver, hey, which parts do you have to wind so that I can get to my doorstep? You could make them pay, you could make them declare, you could give them an area. So it's like, normally you would, let's say, apply the straight route, but let's say if there are passengers who request to wind at quote-unquote approved stops, so that like you could go inside the doorstep a little bit. I don't actually mind this kind of concept. I know it's not easy to implement, and this is only a thing for like experienced drivers who actually know Singapore's like routes by heart. Like the bus is kind of like functioning as a bus and a taxi at the same time. This is actually pretty ambitious, but if it's like near the end of the terminal, I feel it's still workable in this case, especially since Woodland Center Road and the areas that 903 serves, right, they're quite close to each other, so it may be worthwhile experimenting with this concept. So this is how to run a Night Rider bus, a Night Rider concept bus. Hopefully you guys actually learned a lot from this. I tell you things that people don't tell the public. So yeah.